good evening. You're joining Vantage Point here on Newsfirst at a time which is pivotal for the country. We started this year with elections and, well, 6 months on, we find ourselves facing another election. An election coming up in just 2 months' time. Is the country ready for this election? Is the president ready for this election? Is the former president vying to come into as a prime ministerial candidate? Is the SLFP ready for the election? Is the UMP ready to back Ranil, and have they got their strategies right for this election? And also about the new parties that have come to the fore with the announcement of an election around the corner. To talk about all of this and much more, going beyond the headlines you see on the newspaper, hear on the radio and watch on the TV, we are here at Vantage Point to answer those questions, to go beyond the headlines and give you a completely different view of the politics that's happening around you. Welcome to the show. I'm Mahina Bongzo, and joining me in conversation as usual is Dr. Dayan Jayatilaka, a former diplomat and a political scientist. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mahina. Good to have you back from Brazil, of all places.
Yes, it was really indeed a great trip, and I'm glad to be back, and glad to be back at this very exciting moment in our political history. Doctor, now we started this year, as I said, January 8th, we saw a milestone election. We saw the entire end of 2014 with the word election and politics in the mouths and in the lips of everyone who were political specialists, who were not political specialists, who were armchair politicians. And now we hear it again coming into the fore with the elections that were announced for the 17th of August. President Maithripala Sirisena has dissolved Parliament and he is going in for this election. But the question is he ready? Is the party ready? Is the country ready?
Yes, I think so, and I think that it was a little overdue, because according to the 100-day manifesto, elections were scheduled for April 23, or rather, Parliament was to be dissolved on the 23rd of April. Of course, that couldn't happen because of the 19th Amendment, but that was fair enough. But it ran on to almost double the time. It was about 200 days. And it was a minority government. There was a question of legitimacy. The UMP government itself was cracking down very hard on the opposition, especially those who supported the former president, Rajapaksa. The SLFP and the UPFA reacted in the form of no confidence motions. Things were headed for a big punch-up in Parliament. And President Sirisena quite rightly intervened, looking also at the economic figures, I believe, because the economic figures were not looking good. Since we last spoke, Fitch Ratings and Moody's had both weighed in and said the political uncertainty was damaging the economy. The Pathfinder Foundation and the Institute of Policy Studies did so locally. So I think President Sirisena, a little belatedly, did exactly the right thing. He dissolved Parliament. And now the people have a chance of making up their minds as to how they want to complete the political equation of January 8th. Do they want a Maitri Ranil country or a Maitri Mahinda equation or country? That's what it's about. That's
what it's going to boil down to.
Yes.
At the end of the day, because those are the three key personalities in this election campaign. We see parties divided, parties united in the face of this election, but there were certain parties who really brought out the fact that elections should not be held without reforming the electoral system, but now that has taken a backseat.
Yeah, you refer, I think, chiefly to the JHU, Champika Ranolkar and Venerable Athurali Ratana.
Who were very vocal in the January 8th election and played a huge role in really toppling the previous government.
Yes, I remember that. I remember a recording of Minister Rajitha Senaratne surfacing in the last stages of the presidential election campaign, and he didn't contradict the authenticity of that. And that was very interesting, because Rajitha says, you know, this project has been rolling for about 2 years. He was a little surprised, And he said Champika, the JHU, played a key role in it. And that role, according to Rajitha in this conversation, which was broadcast, was that first the JHU drove a wedge between the Mahinda Rajapaksa administration and the minorities, and then that's while being in the Rajapaksa administration, and then came out and is driving a wedge between the Mahinda Rajapaksa administration and the majority. So, going by Rajitha's disclosures, the JHU was quite important as a variable, not only during the January 8th election campaign, but before, in the second term. And President Rajapaksa himself has now disclosed that whenever he wanted to take legal action against the Bodu Bala Sena, it was Minister Champika Ranawaka in cabinet who stopped it. And Mr. Ranawaka has not said no, that's a lie. So, yes, the JHU was quite crucial, but the JHU was locked out because President Sirisena chose, quite rightly, not to take the advice of a party with 2 seats in parliament. And I think the big boys made the decision, that is President Sirisena, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe, and former President Kumaratunga, a big girl, turned 70. I think it's the Troika that decided, also because of diplomatic lobbying, according to the Sunday newspapers, they decided that they'll go for elections and ignored the JHU. Evidently, Champika Ranawaka was made aware of the dissolution and the date of the elections by the Indian High Commissioner when he was greeting President Kalam. So anyway, that's the way it goes. You have to learn to play within your league. When you have 2 seats, you're not one of the big boys.
Well, Maithripala Sirisena is now finding himself in a very difficult situation, a situation where he sees the SLFP, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, split in 2 ways. One supporting him and the other calling for former President Mahinda Rajapaksa to be nominated as the Prime Minister for this election. How do you think Maithripala Sirisena is going to tackle this sort of split? Now, he's already established a committee headed by S.B. Disanayake and including Rajitha Senaratne, Sarath Amunugama, to really bridge this gap, to bridge the fences and take the SLFP as a united front forward. And this committee, as reports say, were supposed to have talks with Mahinda Rajapaksa. So how do you think Maithripala Sirisena is going to sort of face this problem in bridging these gaps in the SLFP?
Well, it really depends on what he sees himself as and what he feels less threatened by and more threatened by. So there are 2 ways of looking at this for him. One would be that if Mahinda comes in as PM, things are going to be a little uncomfortable because he's a personality who has more
support,
much more support and appeal, and the president might feel a little discomfited. That's one scenario. There's another scenario, because President Sirisena knows that the UNP has gone on the record as saying that if it wins, it would promulgate a brand new constitution. And Mr. John Amaratunga, speaking during the 19th Amendment, said that their vision is of President Sirisena as another William Gopala, i.e. a purely ceremonial president. So President Sirisena knows that this could happen if Mr. Wickremesinghe wins an election. And as far as Mahinda Rajapaksa goes, I think President Sirisena is a very shrewd operator. And he knows that even if Mahinda is the PM, if it's an SLFP government, Maithripala Sirisena has quite a few shares in that, which he doesn't have in a UNP government. He's not a UNP.
Yeah, but
in the SLFP, there would be people who move between Maitri and Mahinda in order to get the best from both.
But wouldn't Mahinda seem the more dominant force in such a forum?
He would.
And wouldn't Maithripala Sirisena also feel a bit insignificant as president.
He might, but
sort of
he'll feel far more insignificant if the UNP comes in and has a new constitution, which, as they have promised, the power goes to the Prime Minister, and President Sirisena is just not even a lame duck president, he's just a purely ceremonial president. Now, the Mahinda camp has not said any such thing. In fact, they helped him fight off the UNP's version of the 19th Amendment and reduce the scope of the 19th Amendment. The Mahinda Rajapaksa camp might have people who regret that now because they hope that their guy is going to be the PM, but they were ideologically so committed to a strong state that they helped President Sirisena keep some of the most important powers. So he has quite a few powers as president. He is the head of the SLFP. That's not going to change. There are many inside the Sri Lanka Freedom Party who would work between these two and not commit themselves exclusively to one or the other. Why should they? When you have two people who you can have competing for your support, why should you support only one rather than the other? So from a realistic point of view, there's a lot going for President Sirisena in an SLFP government with a Mahinda Rajapaksa prime ministership. Lots of room for maneuver. He has much less room for maneuver if it's a pure UNP government, even if there's an SLFP faction that's attached to it in the national government. However, people don't make decisions purely on the basis of rational self-interest. They also do so on the basis of emotion
and
psychological factors.
That also comes into play when you look, if Maithripala Sirisena does pave the way for Mahinda Rajapaksa to come in as a prime ministerial candidate, wouldn't that go against the public mandate that he got in January 2015?
Well, the public
that also rides on emotions, isn't it?
Yes, but the public mandate of January 8th was entirely about the presidency. It's not about the parliament.
Yes,
it's not about the prime minister.
Yes, but the people who voted voted Mahinda Rajapaksa out.
Yeah.
So
they voted Mahinda Rajapaksa out as president. They didn't vote Mahinda Rajapaksa out as PM because he wasn't PM. It was a vote for Maitri over Mahinda as the president. Now, this is a different ballgame. That's why you have in the United States, you have a Republican-dominated Congress and a Democratic White House. People don't vote the same way. The mandates are different. The mandate for presidency is very different from a mandate for a parliamentary or congressional election. In France, not this time, but on other occasions, we have had this situation of what they call cohabitation, where the president is from one party with one mandate, and the legislature and the prime minister is from another party with another mandate. So this is a well-known situation.
But isn't the role of the prime minister...
You can't read off from January 8th to August 16th. January 8th was January 8th. August 16th is a search for a fresh mandate.
But isn't the role of the prime minister now quite different in Sri Lanka compared to the roles of the prime minister we've seen before? Like we saw Ranil Wickremesinghe, the prime minister, the current prime minister, giving a lot of weight to the position of prime minister.
Yes,
he even went to a large extent and was stopped by the Supreme Court, bringing all these reforms to the position of prime minister. So suddenly it seems in our political landscape that the prime minister, the role of the prime minister, is being given a lot of significance, a lot of importance.
Since 1978, we've never had such importance constitutionally accorded to the post of PM. That's why this time the election is very different from before. It's really a question of who is going to be the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. It's not who's going to be the President. That's settled. That's done. And that's done for the next 5 years, because so long as we stick to the 19th Amendment, President Sirisena remains the President. Mahinda Rajapaksa has not said that he was going to abolish that system. In fact, they supported the watering down of the 19th Amendment. The UNP says no, they want a change. They want to abolish the presidency. So it's really about who is going to be the PM. That's what this election is about. It's not really about the UNP versus the SLFP or the UNP versus the coalition. It's to do with who is going to be the PM, because the post of the PM, as you said, is far more important now than it has been since 78.
So then wouldn't...
So is it Ranil or Mahinda?
Yes, really? In that case, wouldn't public mandate, as we said, the January 8th election also have an impact on this, because people voted out President Mahinda Rajapaksa completely out of the picture. They wanted him out of the picture. And now if Maithripala Sirisena brings him back into the fold, wouldn't that be a lack of faith for the president?
But that was a presidential election. I mean, the mandate for presidential election and the mandate at a presidential election is about the presidency. What's happening on August 17th is not a presidential election. So the mandate, or the January 8th mandate ended there. It was for President Sirisena, for the 19th Amendment. It opted for President Sirisena over President Rajapaksa, but now it's a parliament election. It's a different post. It's the post of PM. It's like the difference between, I mean, just because you lose, you run for Miss Universe, it doesn't mean you can't run for Miss Asia. It's a different mandate. You got knocked out of Miss Universe, but or the Wimbledon tennis championship, or the Grand Prix, but that doesn't mean that you can't run in another race. There is no connection at all.
So you believe the voters who voted in Maithripala Sirisena would be okay with the decision, if he takes, to bring in President Mahinda Rajapaksa back into the fold?
There are two ways of looking at that, Mahina. From a strictly news point of view, from a media or journalistic point of view, the important question is why we are even having this conversation. Because if the mandate of January 8th was to keep Mahinda Rajapaksa completely out of the picture, why is Mahinda Rajapaksa the most talked about person in the country today? I mean, why is politics today, your news cycle, everything is geared to what's going to happen with Mahinda Rajapaksa? I mean, why even talk about him? He's made the most phenomenal comeback. Nobody's talking about anybody else. It's all about what's Mahinda going to do next. What are they going to do with Mahinda?
It boils down to the personality. It boils down to the support that he's got within the party.
Well, if he's got that support, then obviously the mandate of January 8th was not about, and was certainly not enough to, send him conclusively home and make him a part of the past. Why is it that he, more than anybody else in this country, more than the president, is the most talked about personality? I've never seen this fast a comeback in politics, and that shows that the mandate of January 8th was not really about chasing Mahinda Rajapaksa out and forgetting about the guy, because otherwise he wouldn't be back. We wouldn't be talking about him. It wouldn't be that big a deal.
Well,
the second point is this is Ranil versus Mahinda. It's a polarization. It's not about Maitri. Maitri is not running for the Prime Ministership. He's president, and so we have a very stark choice. And even on the 8th of January, one has to remember the nature of the mandate. In the area where the UNP and the SLFP or Mahinda will fight it out, that is the southern two-thirds of the island. Even when he lost on January 8th, Mahinda won. The 4 lakhs between Maitri and Mahinda were obtained primarily, more than 2.5 lakhs, in the northeast. And that northeast is voting for the TNA or for the SLMC. The fight between the UNP, I mean, Ranil is not running in those areas, nor is Mahinda. They are fighting in exactly that part of the map of Sri Lanka in which Mahinda won in on the 8th of January, even when he lost. So the mandate of January that you're talking about was a split mandate, because Mahinda won in these areas on the 8th of January. So he's fighting on home turf this time.
Now, when this show goes into air, Mahinda Rajapaksa would have made a decision on whether or not he will contest the elections.
Oh, he made that decision, I think.
Yes.
It is simply which vehicle.
when he makes this announcement, how would you read it, Doctor? Would you read it in one angle where he will not probably join the SLFP and would contest independently, or would he join the SLFP as their prime ministerial candidate?
Well, of course, I mean, I can't speak for any politician, leave alone Mahinda Rajapaksa. But my sense of it is that he would not accept anything less than the nomination of the SLFP as the prime ministerial candidate. The election campaign will be about Mahinda as PM. It won't be about an SLFP government. It's going to be about bringing back Mahinda. Now, if the SLFP agrees to naming him as the prime ministerial candidate, I think he will go with the SLFP because he's never been a member, he's never been in any other party.
Yeah.
But if not, he will be...
And he's loyal to his party. He has constantly said that I will contest under the UPFA led by the SLFP.
Yes, but he has the example of President Sirisena, who retained his SLFP membership but contested on the symbol of the swan as part of another coalition. So he might do exactly what President Sirisena did and run on another ticket, as it were, with another symbol, but retaining his SLFP membership. Now, there's also the precedent or the near precedent of Mr. Ranasinghe Premadasa. In 1988, as we know from Mr. Sirisena Kure's memoirs, Mr. Ranasinghe Premadasa was going to run independently if he didn't get the nomination of the United National Party as presidential candidate. So Mr. Kure and Mr. Premadasa had drawn up everything necessary for an independent candidacy. It's not that he loved the UNP, that he didn't love the UNP, but he loved the country and his political project much more than he loved the party. The party came around at the last moment thanks to Mr. Ranjan Wijewaratne, who in a written report to President Jayawardena said that Ranasinghe Premadasa and not Gamini Dissanayake or Lalita Athulan Mudali was the only man who could save the UNP from defeat. And President Jayawardena went along with that. Now President Vijay Tunga, on the other hand, who is also UNP president, chose to pretty much transfer power, to stay out of the race, and allow the transfer of power to the opponent of the UNP, that is Madam Chandrika Bananayake Kumaratunga of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. And therefore you had 20 years of SLFP rule. Now, President Sirisena has to decide whether he is going to be a J.R. Jayawardena and give the nomination to a man he may not like, but draws the support of the majority of his party, or whether he is going to be like President Vijay Tunga and facilitate the transition to his party's rival, that is the United National Party. There is a catch there, though. In this case, even if President Sirisena doesn't give Mahinda the nomination for SLFP candidacy as Prime Minister, and therefore tilts to the UNP, and if Mahinda wins as PM, then he will be in an uncomfortable situation. So, if you look at it purely pragmatically, which very few people do, and certainly not Sri Lankan politicians, but if you look at it pragmatically, it may be a much safer bet to allow Mahinda to run as SLFP candidate, and if the SLFP loses, well, nobody can blame President Sirisena. But if he denies Mahinda the candidacy and the SLFP loses, he will be blamed. And if he denies Mahinda the candidacy and Mahinda wins, well, things may be a little uncomfortable between them.
A lot of politicians who are backing former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who have been backing him ever since Maithripala Sirisena came into the fore and announced that he would be running against Mahinda Rajapaksa, have reiterated their support time and time again for Mahinda Rajapaksa, and they've said that yes, we have a plan A, we have a plan B, in the words of Foreign Minister Wimar Weerawansa. He's already said his party will support Mahinda Rajapaksa. He says that we have a plan A and a plan B, and the plan B sounds better. So there it seems, or as you say, there's a sense that Mahinda Rajapaksa could run independently and also get the support he needs independently.
I think so, because what we are seeing
because these politicians have said that they are starting the campaign for Mahinda Rajapaksa as well.
Yes, and of course Mahinda Rajapaksa seems to have the bulk of the support, the overwhelming bulk of the support of the SLFP, the grassroots, that's the Pradesh Sabha, the Palat Sabha, the provincial councils, and the bulk, but not perhaps the overwhelming bulk, of the parliamentary group. He probably has definitely more than half, probably 2/3 of the parliamentary group. But that's not the real secret of his success. Of course, every politician thinks that what they are doing is the most important thing. But what I think is happening here is something else. You have, for the first time in a very long time, but not for the first time ever, I'll talk about that in a moment, a very strong grassroots surge. There's a grassroots popular movement, which is something we haven't seen for a long time. I say this not only because I've seen it happen, but because I watch the TV. And when I see those crowds, and these are not political meetings, these are supposedly religious functions. Mahinda Rajapaksa, in one sense, is bigger than he was when he was president in the second term. Now he doesn't have state power. He doesn't have governmental power. He's not leading a political party. And he's a cult figure. The kind of response I see, I watch the footage, that's most important. The spontaneity, the electricity, and he's, I don't know, to some segments of the people, it's like a living saint or something like that. But there's another thing going on. It's not just about him. Because I was watching on sort of live YouTube feed the Mathura meeting, and he turns up, he's spotted, he waves from a little bridge-like thing, and the people turn and then they go wild and so on, and then he goes away. But they don't leave. They don't say, we've come to get a glimpse of the guru and off we go. They stay for the meeting, because it's not just about Mahinda. There's something else happening. It's what I would, as a political scientist, call a populist movement. It's a grassroots populist movement of a sort that we have not seen since 1956. And perhaps not even 1956, because in 1956 you had the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which had been founded in 1951. This is 4 small parties. It's got big chunks of a bigger party, the SLFP, but it doesn't have a formidable formal party structure. So it's really what a well-known political scientist of Sri Lankan origin, Professor A.W. Singham, Archer Singham, who was teaching in the United States, said about the Caribbean. It's the hero and the crowd. That was the title of his PhD thesis, which became a book. He was talking about some Latin American and Caribbean figures, and the title of the book was The Hero and the Crowd. So that's what's been happening here, the hero and the crowd. The party factor is less important. So something is happening, and that is why Mahinda Rajapaksa is on center stage, is back, very much back in the picture.
And that is why Maithripala Sirisena too finds himself in this situation, very tight situation in his party, where there are 2 sets of groups pulling in different directions.
Absolutely.
Now, there is reports that is surfacing in the media that another former president, President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, might relieve him of this tug of war by taking over the chairmanship of the party, although she has vehemently denied that she would get into politics. Is there any undercurrents to this story?
By her own admission, actually her own claim made on your TV channel a few months ago, she was very much in politics. She took credit for everything, for bringing Maithripala Sirisena over, for having spotted him in the first place. She projected herself in a long interview as the architect of the political transformation of January 8th. And that Ranil didn't know until the last 2 weeks who the candidate was going to be and so on. So she's been in politics up to her eyebrows. So I don't take seriously the claim that, or the disclaimer that she's not in politics. I don't see how this will really help President Sirisena, because frankly he is more popular than former President Kumaratunga. And he's been in very embarrassing situations when there have been jeers from SLFP audiences, not directed at him, but directed at the former president. So President Sirisena has been rendered somewhat uncomfortable. If he hands the reins of the party over to former President Kumaratunga, I don't know whether it's in the spirit of the policy in the north of handing the title deeds of land to the original owners, whether the SLFP falls under that category. But anyway, I don't think it's going to solve President Sirisena's dilemma, because what's Chandrika going to do? Is she going to run in this election as the prime ministerial candidate? If not, who is going to be the SLFP's prime ministerial candidate when the other two people are running as prime ministerial candidates? I mean, there's no doubt that they will
We've had this conversation before about, if not Mahinda, who will be the prime ministerial candidate of the SLFP?
I mean, it can't be Maithripala Sirisena who's president. So he's out of the running as a prime ministerial candidate. And Chandrika says it's not going to be her. So I don't see her as a solution to the problem.
So strategically thinking, Doctor...
But she's pulling the string. I mean, obviously there are proxies like the part of the Attanagal wing of the SLFP, which is sort of very articulate now. It's really Chandrika Chintana, if you like. But I don't think she can solve this problem.
So, Doctor, from what you're saying, I'm gathering that strategically thinking, the wisest move for the President here is to nominate Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Ministerial candidate of the SLFP, so that the SLFP can solidify its position in this election race, because that will give them a more stronghold. And it would be better to better to have Mr. Rajapaksa as Prime Minister than having Mr. Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister, in a nutshell.
Because Mr. Wickremesinghe will promulgate a new constitution which will put Maitri out of a job, for starters. Whereas he's got lots more cards to play if it's an SLFP administration. Mahinda will be the main personality, but President Sirisena is the party leader. Plus he's got all these... He's got 45 years or 42 years in the SLFP. You can't write him off. He's got nothing in the UNP. So I think that from a realpolitik point of view, that is what he should do. But as I said, that's not the way life and certainly politics in Sri Lanka works. Jaya wasn't a yes. I mean, Jaya belonged to that tradition where kind of a cold realism was part of his makeup. And he would do what was right by the party. President Wijetunga didn't do that. I don't know which one of these two President Sirisena will turn out to be closer to.
Now, the current Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, let's talk about his election race and his aspirations. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has constantly spoken about a unity government, a government where Maithripala Sirisena as President and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe would work well together. Do you see this type of government working for Sri Lanka's political landscape? This unity government that Ranil Wickremesinghe speaks of?
Well, I find it difficult to believe, Mahina, not because of prejudice but because of the record. If Prime Minister Wickremesinghe were that sort, he could have and should have worked smoothly with President Chandrika Kumaratunga when he was Prime Minister the first time. But he didn't. In fact, when Chandrika made a request through Mr. Lakshman Kalwegava, who told me, I was talking at his home that day, to accommodate a representative on the government of Sri Lanka team for the negotiations in Satahit, Thailand with the Tigers, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe turned it down. So he's not a consensus politician. He's, let me be complimentary, he's a conviction politician. He has certain strong views. And he moves unilaterally. He doesn't build consensus. He's a unilateralist, a political unilateralist. That happened again. Now, if he can't work with Chandrika, I don't see how he can work smoothly with Maitri, because look what happened this time. He made life very difficult for President Sirisena by going hell for leather for the SLFP. Chiefly former President Rajapaksa, his family and those around him, but for the SLFP in general. And that's what made President Sirisena so isolated, because the SLFP then regarded him as the man who put Ranil Wickremesinghe in the chair and allowed the UNP government, which was not a elected government, and it didn't have a majority in the House, and it didn't build that majority, which it could have. Through Maitri, it could have built a majority in the House. It was President Sirisena who put together the 19th Amendment coalition in its final form, but the UNP was not satisfied because that was not the kind of 19th Amendment they wanted. So they didn't work closely with the SLP after that, saying, okay guys, now we've got together, we've actually done this, let's keep this going, let's work together. Instead, the UNP went hell for leather, and then
different direction completely.
Then the SLFP retaliated with these belated no confidence motions. So I don't see a smooth working relationship between President Sirisena and Prime Minister Wickremesinghe if the UNP wins the election. They tend to be a little arrogant, and they will go forward with this new constitution, not a reform.
Are you talking about the UNP in general?
UNP. No.
Or Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe?
No, not just Prime Minister Wickremesinghe. That would not be fair by him. It's Prime Minister Wickremesinghe and a thin group of core thinkers like Foreign Minister Mangala Samaraveera, who's already taken steps which have alienated the SLFP and made life difficult for President Sirisena in the international realm, in his move with the GTF. This is not a Maitripala type move. So the UNP leadership doesn't stick to the center. If it had stuck to the center, then I think it would have been much easier for President Sirisena. He would have been much stronger. There wouldn't have been this huge shift to Mahinda Rajapaksa. Why is there a shift to Mahinda Rajapaksa? Because Ranil is such a polarizing figure, and the people around him, Ranil, Mangala, Kiriyala, and a few, the Ranilists are unilateralist and ideological, and they're polarizing. But the UNP as a whole is not. The UNP is a centre-right party. The SLFP is a centre-left party. It's not much of a problem there, not much of a gap. But you're talking about the UNP under another leadership. That leadership has not yet come. If you watch the behavior of politicians and the public, the reaction to a Harsha De Silva, for instance, is positive across the board. But Harsha De Silva is not the leader of the United National Party. It's Ranil and those around him. Ranil, Ravi, Mangala, Kiriyala, John Amaratunga. Very hard right, except on national security and sovereignty.
Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had also stated that he actually gave a challenge to Mahinda Rajapaksa, saying, contest if you will, but the UNP is stronger this time. But Going by the records, Doctor, I mean, yes, as you said, we shouldn't sort of compare a presidential election to a general election, but all these elections make up a party, make up the person.
Yeah.
Right? So here we see again, if Ranil Wickremesinghe, obviously he is coming as a prime ministerial candidate from the UMP, and then we see if Mahinda Rajapaksa comes in as a prime ministerial candidate from the SLFP, it's back to a Ranil Mahinda sort of election, and history has not always been very kind in that instance to Ranil and the UMP.
Well, Mahinda, now Ranil's challenge to Mahinda is a little funny, because when Ranil had the chance of challenging Mahinda in 2010 and 2015, he dodged. I mean, there were two elections where he dodged. He could have been the candidate. He could have been the candidate on January 8th. Instead, they used the proxy candidacy of Maithripala Sirisena. Before that, they used the proxy candidacy of Sarath Fonseca. So, here's a guy who had his chance to fight Mahinda. He ducked twice. And now he's saying, hey, come on, Mahinda, let's fight. Why? Because he thinks the SLFP is going to be split 50-50, and there's no problem. It's a cakewalk. Now, I'm not convinced that it's going to be a cakewalk, because, as you said, we've seen this movie before. Ranil versus Mahinda was 2005. Now, this is not 2005, it's 2015. It's 10 years down the road. What has happened 10 years down the road? Between 2005 and 2015, Mahinda Rajapaksa won a war which, while Ranil was very soft on the LTTE, four predecessors failed to win. Mahinda won, and then went on to modernize the infrastructure of the country. So he has an image as a strong national leader, successful leader who stands for sovereignty, but also a guy with a lot of developmental drive. Now, whether Ranil's image has improved quite as much, whether he has that kind of achievement to show between 2005 and 2015, I don't know. I don't see that. I don't see that. So, why would one assume that a Ranil-Mahinda fight, which ended in one way in 2005, and which was avoided in 2010 and 2015 because Ranil ducked, why should we think it will end in any other way than it did in 2005? Especially when Mahinda has proved himself more as a two-term president. I don't see it.
So, for the UMP, going forward for this election, Doctor, what would they need to keep in mind? What would be the strategies that they need to use at this point of time?
Mahinda, at one level it's very obvious, at another level it's a very difficult question, because it's almost embarrassing to have to answer that. Because the UNP knows that its main weakness for a long time has been Ranil. That's why it's embarrassing for me to have to say it on TV. But this is something the public knew, this is something the UNP knew, which is why there was all this fuss in the party, these struggles, and down your corridor you've got a poster of Ranil holding up a rock saying that somebody threw it at him, and it wasn't Mahinda Rajapaksa. Mahinda, I think, was kind of helping him at the time, tarring the road in front of the Sirikota. This was the big struggle within the UNP to democratize the party constitution, I think in 2011, which your station covered and Ranil got mad at you. This is known by the UNP that Ranil, they didn't have anything personal against Ranil. They just thought that he couldn't win. So, the UNP this time is stuck with him. They're going into a race which they avoided twice and they lost once. They avoided that fight with Mahinda in 2010 and 2015 because of Ranil. The UNP would have taken on Mahinda Rajapaksa. They wanted another candidate. So what did they do? They managed to get Ranil to stand down, and they put Sarath Fonseca there in 2010, and then they put Maithripala Sirisena in 2015, and it worked. And now they're going to have to go in again with Ranil. And against Mahinda Rajapaksa. I don't
And they have no way out this time.
They have no way out. And then going into a battlefield, an arena, everything takes place in a space, a physical space, in which Mahinda Rajapaksa won on January 8th even when he lost the election. The southern two-thirds of the island. Mahinda won 93 seats overall. The Swan got 70. So they are on his battleground. Except for Colombo, where the UNP and the SLFP or Mahinda Rajapaksa will face off. In the other areas where the minorities are the majority, they will be voting for their own parties. Ranil will be leading the UNP into battle against Mahinda in the Sinhala heartland. The battleground is not favorable. So the UNP, they're not drawing those crowds. I mean, you look at the footage of the crowds that Mahinda is drawing, the response, and you look at the UNP crowds. I mean, May Day was big, but the Rajapaksa guys have been having meetings like that from February 18th, Nugegura, to this huge, which was huge, to Martha, and Mahinda wasn't even on the stage. So the UNP just doesn't have that kind of grassroots appeal. Why? The UNP mobilized for Maitripala Sirisena because they knew that it wasn't Ranil and they had a guy who had a chance of beating Mahinda in the Sinhala. I mean, he didn't beat him in the Sinhala Buddhist heartland, but there was a viable candidate. Now the UNP has to mobilize for Ranil against Mahinda, who already has a grassroots movement.
And UNP has appointed Karu Jayasuriya to steer the campaign this time.
They should have made Karu the prime ministerial candidate. I mean, if they wanted to win. Or, I mean, I'm not saying he could have beaten Mahinda, but Ranil, they know he's the worst possible candidate, which is why they didn't run him as the presidential candidate twice. They never let him face Mahinda after 2005. They protected the party by giving Ranil to stand down, Even this time, Ravi, all these guys went and told Iran, no, Chandrika, no, it can't be you. Why can't it be me? Because he'll kill you. I mean, that's why they got him to stand down. I mean, Chandrika says it on TV that she persuaded, many of them persuaded him, look, just don't, it's not going to work, you're going to get wiped out. And we can't afford it, you're going to get creamed. So now it's running.
And back to square one.
I don't see a win.
Well, on that note, I believe we've come to the end of our program. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Dr. Jayatilaka, elections are in 2 months' time, and we'll see more of that iceberg as the days unfold, as events unfold for this election race that is coming up. So thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on the show. And thank you for watching us. We'll be back in a fortnight with more in-depth analysis on the current political situation in Sri Lanka and also the upcoming general elections. Thank you for watching. Good night.